Hey, garbage! Yeah, you! Street trash! Think you can fix a Lamborghini with those filthy hands? The cruel laughter that followed CEO Richardson's words echoed across Elite Motors' pristine parking lot. His $300,000 Lamborghini Huracan sat dead in front of the glass entrance, black smoke rising from its hood like a funeral pyre. Terrell Washington, a homeless black man in torn clothes, sat quietly beside his shopping cart near the dumpsters. Every millionaire client had their phones out now, filming what they thought would be prime entertainment. Richardson strutted closer, his Italian leather shoes clicking on asphalt. "What's the matter, vagrant? Cat got your tongue?" He turned to his audience with theatrical flair. "Ladies and gentlemen, witness the delusion of the mentally ill." The tech billionaire who owned the broken supercar shook his head in disgust at the spectacle. That's when Terrell stood up slowly, every eye burning into him. "Give me 1 minute, I can fix that." The parking lot went dead silent. Have you ever watched someone's entire world flip upside down in 60 seconds? The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Richardson's face twisted into something between disbelief and rage. A homeless man had just challenged him in front of his most important clients, and the audacity was breathtaking. Elite Motors sat in the heart of Beverly Hills, where a single parking spot cost more than most people's annual salary. The dealership's glass walls reflected the California sun like mirrors, showcasing rows of pristine supercars worth millions. This was Richardson's kingdom, built on exclusivity and the unspoken rule that money determined worth. Terrell Washington had been invisible here for 2 years. At 52, his weathered face told stories of nights spent in doorways and meals scrounged from dumpsters. His shopping cart contained everything he owned: a tattered sleeping bag, empty bottles for recycling, and buried beneath old newspapers, tools wrapped in oiled rags that no one had bothered to notice. The broken Lamborghini represented more than just a car problem. The tech billionaire standing beside it, Marcus Carter, had flown in from Silicon Valley specifically to finalize a $5 million fleet purchase for his company. 47 identical Huracans for his top executives, the biggest single deal in Elite Motors history. And it had all gone to hell in 30 seconds. Richardson's master mechanic, a certified Lamborghini technician with 20 years of experience, knelt beside the smoking engine bay. His diagnostic computer showed nothing but error codes. "It's completely fried, boss," he announced loud enough for everyone to hear. The timing chain jumped. The engine seized solid. "This thing is headed straight to the scrapyard." The words hit Richardson like physical blows. $5 million evaporating before his eyes. Chen pulled out his phone, already scrolling through contacts. "I'll call my pilot. This is exactly the kind of incompetence I can't afford to associate with." "Wait!" Richardson's voice cracked with desperation. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool breeze. "We can get another car from the factory. Same spec, same color. It'll be here tomorrow morning." Chen's expression could have frozen fire. "Tomorrow? I needed to drive this car to my board meeting in 3 hours. You promised me perfection, and you delivered this disaster." He gestured at the smoking wreck. "How do I explain to my investors that their CEO is driving a lemon?" The crowd of onlookers had grown. Sales staff whispered among themselves, their voices carrying across the marble showroom floor. Other clients recorded videos, sensing drama worth sharing on social media. The valet attendants had stopped their work entirely, drawn by the spectacle unfolding before them. Even the homeless individuals who usually stayed hidden in the alley had crept closer, drawn by the commotion and the rare sight of one of their own standing center stage. Richardson's career hung by a thread. The dealership owner, notorious for swift firings, would hear about this within the hour. 23 years of building his reputation, climbing from junior salesman to CEO, gone because of one malfunctioning engine. His mortgage, his country club membership, his children's private school tuition. Everything depended on maintaining Elite Motors' reputation for flawless luxury. The California sun beat down mercilessly on the black asphalt, making the chrome bumpers gleam like mirrors and the marble entrance tiles almost too bright to look at directly. A news helicopter circled overhead, probably covering traffic, but Richardson paranoidly wondered if word of his humiliation was already spreading through the city's elite circles. That's when Terrell's quiet voice cut through the chaos again. The timing chain didn't jump. Someone installed the wrong oil filter. Every head turned. Richardson's face went purple with rage, the veins in his temples visibly throbbing. "Security!" he screamed, his voice echoing off the glass walls and reverberating through the showroom. "Get this mental patient away from my customers!" He jabbed his finger at Terrell like a weapon, his gold Rolex catching the sunlight. "You think because you sleep in our alley like a diseased animal, you understand Italian engineering?" The security guard hesitated, torn between following orders and the growing crowd of fascinated spectators. His hand moved toward his radio, but something in the air made him pause. Richardson wasn't finished. His humiliation demanded an audience, and he had one. The pressure of 23 years of climbing social ladders, of proving he belonged among the wealthy elite, exploded outward in vicious words. "Look at this pathetic creature!" He circled Terrell like a predator, his voice rising with each word, spittle flying from his lips. "Probably haven't showered in weeks. Lives off garbage like a rat, smells like piss and failure." His Italian leather shoes clicked against the asphalt as he paced. "And he thinks he can diagnose problems that stump certified professionals." Cruel laughter rippled through the crowd of wealthy clients. Someone shouted, "Make him dance for quarters." Another called out, "Does he do tricks too?" A woman in designer sunglasses held up her phone, live streaming the humiliation to her social media followers. Chen watched the display with obvious disgust, but not at Terrell, at Richardson's behavior. His jaw tightened with each cruel word. The homeless man stood perfectly still throughout the verbal assault, his dark eyes focused on the smoking Lamborghini. His weathered hands remained at his sides, calloused fingers that had once commanded respect in Beverly Hills' most exclusive garages. When Richardson finally paused for breath, sweat staining his silk shirt, Terrell spoke again, his voice calm as still water. 5.7-liter V10, dual-clutch transmission. The oil filter they installed creates bypass pressure that destroys the timing chain hydraulics. It's a common mistake with the 2023 models. Richardson's mouth fell open. Those weren't the words of a delusional vagrant. They were specific, technical, precise. The kind of knowledge that costs thousands of dollars to acquire through factory training programs. The master mechanic looked up from his diagnostic computer, confusion creasing his features. His expensive equipment hadn't identified anything close to what this homeless man had just described. How could he possibly know? "Shut up!" Richardson snapped, panic creeping into his voice like ice water in his veins. He couldn't afford doubt, not now. Not when his entire worldview was being challenged by a man society had written off as worthless. "Don't listen to this lunatic. He's probably high on something. Meth, heroin, whatever these street animals use to escape reality." But Carter had stepped closer, studying Terrell with new interest. The tech billionaire hadn't built a multi-billion-dollar empire by ignoring unexpected sources of information. What kind of bypass pressure? "The aftermarket filter doesn't match the OEM specifications," Terrell explained, his weathered hands tracing invisible diagrams in the air. "Creates a 15% pressure differential. The timing chain tensioner can't compensate, so the chain skips 2 teeth and the valves kiss the pistons." Dead silence. The master mechanic's face had gone pale. Those weren't lucky guesses. That was engineering knowledge that took years to acquire, the kind of deep understanding that separated true experts from parts replacers. Richardson felt control slipping away like sand through his fingers. His entire worldview, that success meant superiority, that appearance determined capability, that the homeless were homeless because they deserved nothing better, was cracking apart in real time. "You want to make a wager?" Richardson's voice turned vicious, desperate. The cornered animal inside him lashed out with everything he had left. "You think you're so smart? Fine. Touch my client's car, and when you break it worse, I'll have you arrested for vandalism. Grand theft auto. You'll spend the next 5 years in a county lockup with your fellow criminals, where garbage like you belongs." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Terrell's eyes never left the Lamborghini. "And if I fix it?" Richardson's laugh was ugly, full of contempt and fear disguised as confidence. "If you fix it?" He turned to his audience, arms spread wide like a carnival barker. "If this homeless junkie somehow repairs a $250,000 supercar that my certified technician can't fix, I'll personally give him the deed to this dealership." More laughter from the crowd, but it sounded forced now, uncertain. Chen crossed his arms, watching the exchange with the intensity of a chess master studying the board. "Actually, let's make this interesting. If he fixes my car, I'll honor the original fleet purchase. All 47 vehicles. If he fails." Carter's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I walk away and tell every CEO in Silicon Valley exactly what kind of circus you're running here." Richardson's knees nearly buckled. His entire future now depended on proving that a homeless man couldn't possibly understand automotive engineering. But before we see what happens next, ask yourself, when did you last look past someone's appearance to see their true capabilities? Drop a comment below and let us know. The moment of truth was coming, and it would change everything. The crowd stared at Terrell Washington, waiting for his answer to Richardson's vicious challenge. But to understand what happened next, you need to know who this man really was beneath the torn clothes and weathered skin. 27 years ago, Terrell owned the most respected European auto shop in Beverly Hills. Washington's European Auto sat just 6 blocks from where he now stood, in a gleaming garage where movie stars and tech moguls brought their most prized possessions. The shop's reputation was built on one simple principle. If Terrell Washington couldn't fix it, it couldn't be fixed. His journey began in his father's shadow. James Washington had been a master mechanic for 43 years, his hands speaking the language of engines before computers ever touched automotive diagnostics. Every evening after school, young Terrell would find his father bent over some impossible repair, tools spread across concrete floors like surgical instruments. "Listen, son," his father would say, pressing Terrell's small ear against a running engine block. "Every machine has a heartbeat. Learn to hear what it's telling you, and you'll never meet a problem you can't solve." James Washington had trained under Italian masters in the 1960s, back when Lamborghini was still a tractor company dreaming of supercars. He'd worked on the first Miura prototypes, his black hands moving with precision that impressed even the most prejudiced European engineers. That knowledge passed to his son like inherited DNA. Terrell earned his first ASE certification at 19. By 25, he was factory certified for every major European manufacturer: Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, McLaren. His reputation grew through whispered recommendations in country clubs and boardrooms where his skin color might have barred entry, but his expertise commanded respect. The shop prospered for 2 decades. Terrell employed 12 master technicians, all trained in his father's philosophy of listening before acting. They handled million-dollar restoration projects, race car preparations, and the kind of complex repairs that other shops declared impossible. Then came the diagnosis that changed everything. Sarah Washington, his wife of 18 years, found the lump on a Tuesday morning in spring. Stage 4 breast cancer, the doctors said. Aggressive, advanced. The treatments would be experimental, expensive, and their insurance covered almost nothing. Terrell mortgaged the shop, then his house, then borrowed against every asset he'd built over 20 years. Sarah fought for 14 months, each day costing more than most people earned in weeks. He sold his tool collection piece by piece, watching his father's legacy disappear into medical bills and pharmaceutical company profits. She died on a Friday evening in December, holding his hand while machines beeped their electronic prayers around her hospital bed. The medical bills didn't die with her. 6 months later, the shop was gone. Seized by creditors who cared nothing for reputation or craftsmanship. The house followed 3 months after that. Terrell found himself standing in an empty garage, holding only his father's oldest toolbox and the ASE certification cards that had once meant everything. Depression hit like a sledgehammer to the soul. Some nights he couldn't remember his own name, let alone the intricate timing specifications of European engines. He'd wake up in doorways, unsure how he'd gotten there, his mind wrapped in fog thick as cotton. The streets swallowed him whole. For 2 years, Terrell Washington ceased to exist in any meaningful way. The man who had once commanded $200 per hour for his expertise now begged for quarters outside the very dealerships where his former clients bought new cars. Nobody recognized the homeless man as the master mechanic who had once saved their vintage Ferraris and race-prepped their Porsches. But machines don't forget, even when their caretakers do. Slowly, like muscle memory returning after injury, Terrell's hands began to remember their purpose. He started fixing small things for fellow homeless individuals: shopping cart wheels, portable radios, camp stoves rescued from dumpsters. Each repair brought back fragments of his former self. He began watching the cars at Elite Motors during his long, empty days. The same models he'd once serviced in climate-controlled perfection now passed before him like ghosts of his former life. He noticed patterns, problems, the subtle signs that preceded major failures. The 2023 Lamborghini Huracan had been whispering its problems for weeks. Terrell heard it in the slight irregularity of its idle, saw it in the barely perceptible vibration that occurred during hard acceleration. The timing chain tensioner was failing, stressed by an oil filter that created pressure differentials the Italian engineers never intended. He'd tried to warn the service department twice, approaching during shift changes when security was distracted. Both times he'd been chased away like a diseased animal, his words dismissed before he could explain what he'd observed. Now that same engine sat dead before him, its failure as predictable as sunrise. In his shopping cart, wrapped in oiled rags beneath newspapers and empty bottles, lay his father's tools. The ones he couldn't bear to sell, even when hunger gnawed his stomach and winter froze his bones. A stethoscope for listening to engine heartbeats. Timing tools forged in Germany 7 decades ago. Precision instruments that had diagnosed problems when computers were still science fiction. His father's voice echoed across the years. "A broken man can still fix what's broken, son. Sometimes that's all we're good for." Terrell looked at the crowd of faces surrounding him, some sneering, some curious, most simply waiting for entertainment. These people saw only his circumstances, never bothering to look deeper. But the Lamborghini would listen. Machines always did. Richardson's challenge hung in the Beverly Hills air like a death sentence. $5 million, his career, and his entire worldview balanced on the edge of a homeless man's claim. The tech billionaire Marcus Carter stood with arms crossed, his expression unreadable as smartphone cameras captured every angle of the unfolding drama. "Well?" Richardson's voice cracked with nervous energy. "Are you going to fix my client's car, or are you just another delusional street junkie talking big?" Terrell's response was quiet, measured. "I'll need 1 minute with the engine." The crowd erupted in fresh laughter. A woman in Chanel sunglasses shrieked, "1 minute? My manicurist takes longer than that." The cruel amusement rippled through the gathering like wildfire, feeding on itself until the parking lot echoed with mockery. Richardson seized the moment, his desperation transforming into theatrical confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. This vagrant claims he can solve in 60 seconds what certified professionals couldn't fix in an hour. He gestured dramatically toward Terrell's shopping cart. Using what exactly? Your collection of garbage? But Richardson wasn't done. The crowd's laughter had emboldened him, made him drunk on their approval. Let's make this official then. A real wager, witnessed by everyone here. His voice rose to Carnival Barker volume. If you somehow manage to fix Mr. Carter's Lamborghini in 1 minute, I'll personally fund whatever fantasy you're chasing. Job training, rehab, whatever it takes to get you off my streets. The homeless man's steady gaze never wavered. And if I fail? Richardson's smile turned predatory. When you fail, you'll be arrested for criminal mischief, banned from this property permanently, and I'll make sure every business owner in Beverly Hills knows exactly what kind of trouble you are. He paused for effect. Plus, I'll have you committed for psychiatric evaluation. Clearly, anyone who thinks they can repair Italian engineering with street knowledge needs professional help. The cruelty of it sent murmurs through the crowd. Even some of the wealthy clients shifted uncomfortably at Richardson's venom. That's when a new voice cut through the tension. Gentlemen, perhaps we should establish some ground rules. Everyone turned to see Frank DeMarco approaching from the service bay. At 68, the legendary mechanic moved with the careful precision of someone who had spent 5 decades working with million-dollar machines. His weathered hands bore the scars of countless repairs, and his reputation in automotive circles was beyond question. Richardson's face paled. DeMarco's unexpected presence complicated everything. The old Italian had been Richardson's mentor 15 years ago, back when Richardson was still a junior salesman trying to learn the difference between a carburetor and a fuel injector. Frank, Richardson stammered, what are you doing here? DeMarco's steel-gray eyes took in the scene with obvious disapproval. I came to discuss the vintage Ferrari restoration project. Instead, I will find you conducting a circus in the parking lot. His gaze settled on Terrell with professional curiosity. This man claims he can diagnose Lamborghini's problem. It's just some homeless lunatic, Richardson said quickly. Probably haven't seen the inside of a garage in decades. But DeMarco ignored Richardson entirely, addressing Terrell directly. What's your assessment of the engine failure? Terrell's voice remained calm. Oil filter bypass pressure caused timing chain tensioner failure. Chain jumped 2 teeth, valves contacted pistons. The engine isn't seized. It's just mistimed. DeMarco's eyebrows rose slightly. Those weren't the words of someone guessing wildly. Interesting theory. You've worked on V10s before? 27 years of European automotive repair, Terrell replied. Specialized in Lamborghini, Ferrari, McLaren. Richardson laughed harshly. He's delusional. Look at him. Does he look like someone who's touched a Lamborghini? But DeMarco studied Terrell with the eye of someone who had seen expertise in unexpected places. Very well. I'll oversee this assessment. He turned to address the crowd. If this man can identify and correct the engine problem in 60 seconds, using only basic tools, then we'll know his claims have merit. Chen stepped forward, his business instincts engaged. What if he damages the engine further? DeMarco's weathered face creased into something resembling a smile. Then Richardson's insurance will cover it, and we'll know exactly what kind of operation Elite Motors really runs. The crowd pressed closer, forming a tight circle around the smoking Lamborghini. Smartphones emerged from designer purses and tailored suit pockets. Someone started a live stream. The hashtag homeless mechanic began trending in real time as the video spread across social media platforms. Richardson felt control slipping away completely. This was supposed to be a simple humiliation, a way to restore order and demonstrate the natural hierarchy of things. Instead, it had become a public trial of his own judgment and character. Fine, he snapped, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool breeze. 60 seconds. But when this vagrant destroys my client's engine, I want everyone here to witness his complete failure. Terrell moved toward his shopping cart with deliberate calm. From beneath newspapers and empty bottles, he withdrew a bundle of oiled cloth. The watching crowd murmured as he unwrapped tools that gleamed despite their obvious age, precision instruments forged in an era when craftsmanship meant something more than quarterly profits. A vintage stethoscope for listening to engine rhythms, timing tools marked with German precision measurements, a small mirror on an articulated arm for seeing into impossible spaces. Each piece showed the wear of decades of use, but their edges remained sharp, their mechanisms smooth. DeMarco's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the tools. He recognized quality when he saw it, regardless of its owner's circumstances. 60 seconds, Richardson announced, his voice tight with desperation. Starting when Mr. DeMarco gives the signal. Chen pulled out his phone, activating the stopwatch function. I'll keep time. The crowd fell silent. Cameras focused. Even the homeless individuals who had gathered at the alley's edge held their breath. Terrell stood beside the Lamborghini's open hood, his father's tools spread across the fender like surgical instruments. The engine bay yawned before him, complex and beautiful, and currently as dead as a tomb. DeMarco raised his hand. When you're ready. Terrell nodded once, his calloused hands already reaching for the stethoscope. 60 seconds begins. DeMarco's hand dropped. Now. The clock started ticking, and with it, the fate of everyone watching would be decided. The second DeMarco's hand dropped, Terrell moved with the fluid precision of a master surgeon. While Richardson expected fumbling and confusion, Terrell's weathered hands flowed across the engine bay with absolute certainty. Every movement was deliberate, efficient, born from muscle memory carved by 3 decades of expertise. First discovery, seconds 1 to 20. Instead of diving into the obvious chaos of disconnected wires and scattered diagnostic equipment, Terrell reached for his father's vintage stethoscope. The crowd watched in confusion as he ignored the smoking components and placed the instrument against seemingly random points on the engine block. "What's he doing?" someone whispered. "It's not even running." But Terrell wasn't listening for engine noise. He was reading the mechanical signature left behind by catastrophic failure. His trained ear detected something the expensive diagnostic computers had missed entirely. "There," he said quietly, tapping a specific spot on the cylinder head. "Cylinder 7. Listen." DeMarco leaned closer, his decades of experience recognizing something significant in Terrell's focused expression. Terrell moved the stethoscope to cylinder 6, then 8, comparing the subtle differences in mechanical tension. The timing chain didn't snap. It jumped exactly 2 teeth on the exhaust cam. See how cylinder 7's valve clearance sounds different from the others? He demonstrated by tapping each cylinder head with the stethoscope's metal disc. The trained ear could detect minute variations in resonance, the telltale signature of valves that had contacted pistons at the wrong moment. Richardson's master mechanic stepped closer, his pride stung by the homeless man's confidence. "That's impossible. You can't diagnose timing issues on a dead engine." "You can if you know what to listen for," Terrell replied calmly. He pointed to specific valve covers. Cylinder 7's exhaust valve is held open by piston contact, creates a different acoustic signature in the head casting. DeMarco's eyes widened. That level of diagnostic precision was beyond most factory-trained technicians. 40 seconds remaining. Second discovery. Seconds 21 to 40. Terrell set down the stethoscope and reached for his makeshift inspection mirror. A dental mirror attached to a telescoping rod, tools no dealership would ever stock. While the crowd expected him to start dismantling components, he slid the mirror into the oil filler cap opening. "Oil analysis by sight?" Richardson scoffed. "This is getting more ridiculous by the second." But Terrell wasn't looking at oil. He angled the mirror to reflect light deep into the engine's timing chain housing, visible through the oil filler neck. His positioning was so precise that DeMarco moved to see what had captured his attention. "There," Terrell said, holding the mirror steady. "The hydraulic timing chain tensioner. See how it's fully extended, but the chain still has slack?" DeMarco squinted into the narrow opening. What he saw made his breath catch. The tensioner piston was indeed at maximum extension, yet the chain showed visible looseness. "The tensioner failed because someone installed an oil filter with the wrong bypass pressure rating," Terrell continued, his voice gaining strength. "Standard aftermarket filter creates 15% higher bypass pressure than OEM specification. The extra pressure overwhelmed the tensioner's hydraulic chamber. He used his phone's flashlight to illuminate the inspection further. See that oil residue pattern on the chain guides? Classic signature of pressure-induced tensioner failure. The chain stretched under load, jumped timing, and the valves kissed the pistons." The master mechanic's face had gone pale. His expensive diagnostic computer had shown only generic fault codes, missing entirely the root cause that this homeless man had identified with a mirror and a flashlight. Chen stepped closer, his business instincts recognizing expertise when he saw it. "How do you know about bypass pressure specifications?" 27 years diagnosing European engines," Terrell replied. "Lamborghini V10S are particularly sensitive to oil pressure variations. The 2023 model year introduced tighter hydraulic tolerances that most aftermarket filter manufacturers haven't caught up to." Richardson felt reality shifting beneath his feet. These weren't the rambling theories of a delusional vagrant. This was technical knowledge that cost thousands of dollars to acquire through factory training programs. 20 seconds, DeMarco announced, but his voice carried a new note of respect. Third discovery. Seconds 41 to 60. For his final act, Terrell reached for the most unlikely tool in his collection, a simple flathead screwdriver worn smooth by decades of use. While everyone expected complex diagnostics, he moved directly to a small access port hidden beneath a plastic cover on the engine's left side. "What's he doing now?" Richardson demanded, panic creeping into his voice. Terrell removed the plastic cover to reveal a hexagonal adjustment fitting that most people would never notice. "Emergency timing reset port," he explained matter-of-factly. "Lamborghini engineers include them on every V10, but they don't advertise the feature because dealers make more money on complete engine replacements." The crowd leaned closer as Terrell inserted a hex key from his father's tool collection into the hidden port. The timing chain tensioner has a manual reset function. When hydraulic pressure fails, you can mechanically return the tensioner to proper position and restore correct chain tension. He turned the hex key precisely 1 3/4 turns counterclockwise. Deep within the engine, metal components shifted with barely audible clicks. "But the valves already contacted the pistons," the master mechanic protested. "Even if you reset the timing, the engine will be destroyed." Terrell's weathered face showed the first hint of a smile. "Only if the contact was severe enough to cause permanent damage. In this case, the timing jumped during deceleration, not acceleration. Minimal contact force. The interference was geometric, not catastrophic." He moved to the ignition and turned the key. The engine turned over smoothly, compression building normally in all cylinders. 47. 48, 49. Carter counted down the final seconds. Terrell made one final adjustment to the timing reset mechanism, ensuring perfect chain tension. Sometimes the most complex problems have the simplest solutions. You just need to understand the engineering philosophy behind the design. 57, 58, 59. At exactly 60 seconds, Terrell stepped back from the engine bay and nodded to DeMarco. "Time," Carter announced. The parking lot fell silent except for the soft whisper of wind through palm trees. The smoking Lamborghini sat motionless, its hood open like a patient on an operating table. DeMarco moved to the driver's seat. his weathered hands gripping the steering wheel with obvious anticipation. Decades of experience had taught him to recognize true expertise, and what he'd just witnessed defied every assumption about where knowledge lived. He turned the ignition key. The V10 engine roared to life with a sound like controlled thunder. Not the rough, irregular idle of a damaged engine, but the precise mechanical symphony of Italian engineering operating exactly as Lamborghini's designers had intended. The exhaust note was pure, strong, perfect. DeMarco revved the engine gently, listening to the smooth acceleration and clean deceleration. Every cylinder fired in perfect sequence. The timing was flawless. The hydraulic systems operated without hesitation. He stepped out of the car, his face showing something between amazement and professional respect. "Madonna mia," he said quietly. "Perfetto." The crowd stood frozen, phones still recording, minds struggling to process what they'd just witnessed. A homeless man had accomplished in 60 seconds what certified professionals couldn't achieve in hours. Using basic tools and pure knowledge, he'd brought a $250,000 machine back from the dead. Richardson's face had drained of all color. His entire worldview, that appearance determined capability, that homelessness meant worthlessness, that expensive certifications guaranteed expertise, lay in ruins around his feet. Chen walked slowly around the purring Lamborghini, his expression shifting from skepticism to amazement to something approaching reverence. "How?" was all he managed to say. Terrell began packing his father's tools back into their oiled cloths, his movements calm and methodical. "Engineering doesn't care about your circumstances. A machine either works or it doesn't. The problems tell you exactly what's wrong if you know how to listen." The homeless individuals watching from the alley's edge started applauding first. Then DeMarco joined them, his weathered hands coming together in slow, respectful claps. Carter followed, then some of the more perceptive clients. But Richardson remained frozen, staring at the impossible scene before him. His career, his assumptions, his entire understanding of the world had just been overturned by a man society had written off as worthless. The Lamborghini's engine continued its perfect idle, a mechanical testament to expertise that lived in the most unexpected places. And the real reckoning was just beginning. The Lamborghini's perfect idle filled the Beverly Hills air like a mechanical prayer answered. DeMarco sat behind the wheel, his experienced hands running through every diagnostic sequence he knew, his weathered face reflecting decades of automotive expertise being challenged and confirmed in real time. "Run the full systems check," Carter commanded, his phone still recording every moment. The tech billionaire's business instincts told him he was witnessing something extraordinary, something that would reshape how he viewed talent and expertise forever. DeMarco nodded and began the comprehensive evaluation. He pressed the accelerator gently, listening to the V10's response. The engine climbed smoothly through its rev range, each cylinder firing in perfect sequence, the exhaust note pure and strong without a hint of the mechanical chaos that had existed just minutes before. The sound was intoxicating, 10 cylinders of Italian engineering singing in perfect harmony. The idle dropped back to exactly 850 RPM, the factory specification down to the single digit. Every sensor reading displayed green on the dashboard, every system operating within parameters that Lamborghini's engineers had spent years perfecting. "Transmission," DeMarco announced, engaging the dual-clutch system. The gears shifted with hydraulic precision, each engagement smooth as silk. No grinding, no hesitation, no signs of the cascade failure that should have destroyed multiple systems when the timing chain jumped. Richardson stood frozen 20 feet away, his face the color of ash. Sweat had soaked through his silk shirt despite the cool breeze, and his hands trembled as reality crashed down around him. Everything he'd believed about worth, about capability, about the natural order of society lay shattered at his feet. The crowd of wealthy clients pressed closer, their phones capturing every angle of the impossible scene. The homeless man who had been invisible to them for 2 years, dismissed as human debris, had just accomplished something their money couldn't buy. True expertise applied with surgical precision. DeMarco stepped out of the Lamborghini and walked directly to Terrell, his steel-gray eyes holding something between amazement and professional respect. In 43 years of working on engines, I've seen maybe 5 people diagnose timing chain problems by sound alone on a dead engine. His voice carried the weight of decades in the industry. You didn't just fix this car. You understood it. The validation hit the crowd like a physical force. This wasn't some lucky guess or accidental success. This was master-level expertise applied under impossible pressure, witnessed by someone whose opinion carried absolute authority in automotive circles. Chen approached the engine bay, studying the simple tools Terrell had used: a stethoscope, a mirror, a worn screwdriver. You said the aftermarket oil filter caused this? Terrell nodded, pointing to the component in question. Wrong bypass pressure rating. Creates hydraulic stress the timing system can't handle. It's a common problem with 2023 models when dealers use generic filters to save money. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Richardson's dealership had installed that filter during the last service, cutting corners to boost profit margins. The irony was devastating. His penny pinching had created the very problem that now threatened his career. Show me, Carter demanded. Terrell retrieved the removed filter, pointing to the technical specifications printed on its side. See this number? 17 psi bypass pressure. The OEM filter runs at 14.7 psi. Seems minor, but the timing chain tensioner operates within 2 psi tolerances. The extra pressure overwhelmed the hydraulic chamber. DeMarco examined the filter himself, his expression darkening as he recognized the corner cutting that had caused the cascade failure. Santa Maria, he muttered in Italian. Criminal negligence. The master mechanic who had declared the engine destroyed stepped forward, his pride devastated by the homeless man's superior knowledge. How could you know that specification by memory? Because I've seen this exact failure 12 times in the past 6 months, Terrell replied calmly. Always the same aftermarket filter, always the same hydraulic pressure issue, always the same timing chain damage. I tried to warn your service department twice, but security chased me away both times. The words hit Richardson like physical blows. This homeless man had been trying to prevent the very disaster that had just nearly destroyed everything, and Richardson's own prejudice had silenced the warning. Chen's face had gone hard as granite. You're telling me this failure was preventable? That your service department ignored a warning from someone who clearly understood the problem? Richardson tried to speak, but only managed strangled sounds. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. The crowd began to murmur, phones still recording, the full scope of the situation becoming clear. This wasn't just about mechanical expertise. It was about institutional blindness, about assumptions so deep they prevented recognition of obvious truth. DeMarco started the Lamborghini one final time, listening to the engine's perfect symphony. This machine is operating better than factory specification. Compression is optimal, timing is precise, all systems are balanced. He looked directly at Richardson. In my professional opinion, this engine will outlast 3 others that haven't experienced this repair. The parking lot fell silent except for the Lamborghini's perfect idle and the distant hum of Beverly Hills traffic. 37 people had witnessed something that would challenge their assumptions forever. Expertise existing in places society taught them never to look. Terrell finished packing his father's tools, his movements calm despite the earth-shaking moment he'd just created. The machine was fixed, the problem solved, justice beginning its slow but inevitable arrival. The silence stretched like a held breath until Carter broke it with 3 words that would change everything. I want him. The tech billionaire pointed directly at Terrell, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to acquiring the best talent regardless of packaging. "Whatever it takes, name your price." Richardson's mouth fell open, but no sound emerged. His brain struggled to process a reality where a homeless man commanded more respect than his entire certified staff. DeMarco stepped forward, his weathered face serious. "Mr. Washington, I represent Lamborghini's West Coast service operations. We've been searching for a senior diagnostic specialist for our Beverly Hills facility." He extended a business card with hands that had built legends. "The position offers full benefits, housing assistance, and a starting salary of $95,000 annually." The crowd gasped. $95,000 for someone they'd dismissed as worthless garbage moments before. But Carter wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts worth billions. "I maintain 47 supercars across 3 states. My current maintenance budget is $200,000 per year, and I'm constantly dealing with incompetent service." His eyes locked on Terrell's. "I'll double Lamborghini's offer. Be my personal automotive consultant. 2 job offers. $200,000 in potential income. For a man who'd been sleeping in doorways an hour earlier." Terrell studied both offers with the same calm precision he'd applied to the engine repair. "Mr. DeMarco, your diagnostic specialist position, would I have authority to implement proper service protocols?" "Complete authority," DeMarco confirmed. "We need someone who understands these machines at the level you've just demonstrated." Richardson finally found his voice, desperation making it crack. "Wait! This is my dealership. I make the hiring decisions here." Chen's laugh was cold as winter steel. "Your dealership? After what just happened, I doubt you'll be making any decisions about anything." He turned to address the crowd. "Everyone here witnessed gross negligence, public humiliation of a master technician, and diagnostic incompetence that nearly cost me millions." The wealthy clients nodded, their phones having captured every cruel word Richardson had spoken. Terrell looked at DeMarco's business card, then at Carter's expectant face. "I'll take the Lamborghini position." Steady work, helping people, training the next generation. That's what my father would have wanted. DeMarco smiled, extending his hand for a firm shake. "Welcome to the team, Mr. Washington." The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause, the same people who'd mocked him now celebrating his triumph. But wait until you see what happened to Richardson next. Richardson's downfall began before the Lamborghini's engine had even cooled. Marcus Carter pulled out his phone, his fingers moving with the efficiency of someone who'd built empires through decisive action. "I'm texting my assistant now. Every CEO in my network needs to know what kind of operation Elite Motors really runs." His voice carried across the parking lot like a death sentence. "Negligent service protocols, abusive management practices, and complete dismissal of obvious expertise." The wealthy clients around them began checking their own phones, many of them following Carter's lead. Social media posts were already going viral. #HomelessGenius was trending. Videos of Richardson's cruel verbal assault were being shared thousands of times per minute, each share destroying his reputation further. Within 20 minutes, Richardson's phone began buzzing with calls from the dealership's corporate headquarters. The first call was concerning. The second was angry. The third was from the regional director, demanding his immediate presence in the main office. But the real blow came from an unexpected source. Richard. The voice belonged to Margaret Thornfield, Elite Motors owner and Richardson's boss for the past 8 years. She'd arrived unannounced, her silver Bentley pulling into the parking lot just as the crowd began to disperse. Her expression could have frozen fire. "Margaret, I can explain—" "Explain what?" Her voice cut through his stammering like a blade. "Explain how you publicly humiliated someone with obvious expertise? Explain how your cost-cutting on oil filters nearly destroyed a client's $250,000 vehicle? Or explain how you almost lost us a $5 million fleet purchase?" Richardson's face went pale. "You don't understand the situation." I understand perfectly. Margaret's smile was sharp as broken glass. I've been watching the live streams for the past 10 minutes. So has everyone else in Beverly Hills. She gestured towards the crowd still filming with their phones. Your behavior today has been recorded by 37 people and shared across every social media platform. Elite Motors' reputation is now tied to your public breakdown. The numbers were devastating. The dealership's social media mentions had exploded into chaos. One-star reviews poured in from people who'd never even visited the location. Scheduled appointments were being canceled in real time as clients called to distance themselves from the controversy. Effective immediately, you're demoted to junior sales associate, Margaret announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. No management responsibilities, no client contact authority, and your salary is cut to match your new position. The crowd murmured in appreciation. This was justice served swiftly and publicly. But Margaret wasn't finished. Furthermore, Elite Motors will be implementing new service protocols immediately. All future complex diagnostics will be referred to our new consulting specialist. She nodded toward Terrell, who was still quietly packing his father's tools. Mr. Washington will have final authority on any European vehicle service that our regular staff can't handle. The irony was perfect. Richardson would now be sending difficult repairs to the same man he'd publicly humiliated, paying premium consulting fees for expertise he'd dismissed as worthless. Chen stepped forward with obvious satisfaction. Mrs. Thornfield, given these new protocols, I'm prepared to honor my original fleet purchase. 47 Lamborghini Huracans, with the condition that Mr. Washington personally oversees all service and maintenance. Agreed, Margaret replied immediately. Mr. Washington, would you be willing to split your time between Lamborghini's facility and consulting for Elite Motors? Terrell nodded calmly. I'd be honored to help prevent these problems for other clients. 6 months later, Richardson found himself in the strange position of regularly driving premium vehicles to Terrell's new diagnostic center. The man he'd called garbage and street trash now commanded $200 per hour for his expertise, and Richardson had to ask politely for appointment slots. The transformation was complete when Richardson approached Terrell after delivering a particularly challenging Ferrari restoration case. I owe you an apology, Richardson said quietly, his arrogance replaced by something resembling humility. What I said that day was inexcusable. Terrell looked up from the Ferrari's engine bay, his hands steady on tools that had regained their proper respect. Apology accepted. But the real question is what you learned from it. Richardson nodded slowly. That expertise doesn't announce itself with credentials or expensive clothes. That I nearly destroyed my career by judging appearance instead of ability. He paused. Would you consider teaching me proper diagnostic techniques? I'd like to actually understand what I'm selling. The student had become the teacher, and justice had found its perfect balance. 1 year later, Terrell Washington stood in the gleaming bay of his own diagnostic center, Second Chance Automotive, watching his newest class of trainees work on complex European engines. 12 formerly homeless individuals, each learning the skills that could transform their lives completely. Richardson was there too, no longer the arrogant CEO, but a dedicated student learning proper diagnostic techniques. His transformation from tormentor to apprentice had become legendary throughout Beverly Hills, proof that even the most prejudiced hearts could change when confronted with undeniable truth. The center had placed 53 people into automotive careers, each success story spreading ripples of hope through communities that society had written off. Marcus Carter's foundation funded the entire program, having learned that true innovation came from recognizing talent wherever it lived. Terrell's motto, painted in bold letters above the workshop entrance, captured everything. Expertise doesn't need permission to exist. It only needs opportunity to shine. If this story opened your eyes to hidden potential around you, share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to Black Tales Stories for more stories about extraordinary people in ordinary places, and tell us in the comments, What hidden talent have you overlooked in someone because of their circumstances? There's a detail at minute 432 that only the most observant viewers catch. Rewatch and see if you spot the moment everything truly changed. Your next comment could inspire someone to see past appearances and discover greatness hiding in plain sight.